Hello, welcome. It's the Wrestling Mat. I'm Matt Camp. Good to be with you, as always, every weekday, 1 p.m. Eastern, right here at thewrestlingmatshow.com, which will appear over my shoulder, just like that. How you doing? Thewrestlingmatshow.com. That's where our archives are. If you watch past episodes, you miss past episodes, you miss shorts, you miss previous segments. We put it all out there for you, and there's always comments going up, and I answered a bunch of them this morning, perhaps. Not perhaps, I did. You may have seen those already. So yeah, if you're not watching it live or you catch it after the fact, you catch this live episode after the fact. No matter when you're watching, I thank you very much. Everybody here from the Wrestling Mat thanks you very much. Support goes a very long way, whether you're watching, whether you're sharing, whether you're commenting, whether you're becoming a member, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But all of it, I want to say thank you for it. What's up, WWE for Life? What's up, Phil? What's up, Nerdy Dude? Good to have you all here. Love to see the emojis out there. If you're a member, you may know you can use the emojis that are my faces. And who would have ever thought that my face would become an emoji? What's up, first name John? John, was that you with the tweet yesterday about The Rock? I think I retweeted you. I think that was you. I enjoyed that very much. I realized that meme of, right? I'm gonna get it perfected. It's like this. That Rock meme. I need the glasses and the sophisticated glasses. I'm a smart guy. I'm a Booker glasses. I have to get those. By the way, I said it on Twitter. Whether it was you or somebody else, that somebody had posted me doing the meme. That has to be, and I realized it's going to be like, what, 5 months after the fact? No, it came out in July. 1, 2, 3. 3 months after the fact. That could still live on, especially if Rock comes back to the equation as a Halloween costume, right? Like that's a great wrestling-themed Halloween costume is alternate timeline. I always knew what I was doing, The Rock, changing the story. That meme. I feel like that has to be something. John, thank you very much for putting it out there. I appreciate that. In a funny way, I could totally see somebody like Xavier Woods doing that, like, and just kind of sneaking it in there. But yes, I saw your buddy got that going, and fantastic work all around. You got to laugh at wrestling, even if it's ridiculous. I redecorated a little bit last night after the show. I don't know if you guys have seen. We added some things. I put a Lego in here. The Seinfeld set's now in here now. And Danhausen, who loves Seinfeld, is watching over the Seinfeld set. So that's here now. We got Hollywood Blonde, Stunning Steve in here, which has the fantastic cut, whatever. AJ WCW, that's a great one. Vader from New Japan. We got all kinds of stuff in here that I added. Bam Bam, ECW champ there. I know what the 3 letters are on it, but it's kind of a mix of old WCW, end of WCW, New Japan Vader, ECW, the boss Andre with like the 4 seconds he had the world title. I like to mix it up. And I always love seeing the comments like after the fact when in the comments section, people go, oh, I saw that one. That was awesome or whatever. So I like that. I like when people look at there's some Easter eggs here sometimes. I've hidden some stuff here. We love to see it. Seinfeldhausen, yes. Jerryhausen, Kramerhausen. I love the idea of Kramer would believe a Danhausen curse. There's a couple of people who does it. He doesn't know. Troy Bond does modern Seinfeld episodes. If you don't follow him, he's a very funny comedian. I love the idea of Kramer, like Kramer would be friends with Danhausen, and then he would believe that he could curse people. And you know what would happen? He would do it enough times, like where something would happen to the other person that he cursed, and then he would believe it. And like, it happened again. He'd curse George, and George would have, bad luck in something, or lose his job, or lose the girl he's with. He put the curse on him. The Kavorka, the opposite. That's a whole episode. Who knew we were doing wrestling Seinfeld? RJ City does some fantastic Seinfeld wrestling jokes. You got to look at his Twitter. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he has a thread of that. I got to talk to RJ. Maybe we can get him on before All In. I hope so, because obviously we have a lot of stories to tell. And we're going to share some stories today. See how I transitioned? It's like I've been a professional at this for 10 years. Stories I want to share today, because tonight is Bryan Danielson versus Jeff Jarrett. Anything goes on Dynamite. Ahead of All In, leading to more of that story. We're going to see Ricky the Dragon Steamboat as a special guest. But I was asked, are there any stories about Bryan Danielson / Daniel Bryan when you worked with him and Jeff Jarrett? And I have plenty of them. We're going to get into that today. Jeff and I go back a very long time. Jeff is actually, Dom, I'm going to send you a picture via text so you could put this up in a little bit. Jeff is one of the reasons, while not intentional, I started watching wrestling. And there is a story that is a bit regional, even though I'm a Northeast guy and Jeff certainly isn't. There's a story that is regional that has to do with that. So I'm going to try and get that picture, Dom, to you during the show. If you see me texting, folks, I want to enhance the show with visuals and all that. So I'm going to try and find that picture because it's from SummerSlam 2022. Jeff refereed the match between the Usos and Montez and Angelo Dawkins. So I'm going to find that picture as I'm talking here. But let's do this. How about this? What about the memberships that we're offering right now at thewrestlingmatchshow.com? Because you put that picture up and I can look for other things while I'm talking. There you go. And we're going to fix that graphic, I promise, in the next day or two. Right above Todd. It used to be right below Todd because it used to be over this shoulder. Now it's switched to the other shoulder. But right above Todd, you see what you get. The loyalty badges. Some of you are using those emojis already. The member-only live chats, we're starting to figure out the schedule for those for the month of August. So the AMAs, be ready for that. You're going to get some of that information coming out very soon. The merchandise, I promise, is coming soon. I know I keep saying that, but I want to make sure it's actually good, and I want to make sure that we're not overcharging anybody, and I want to make sure it's cost-effective across the board, because sometimes people trot out merch, and then it's like, oh, cool, this isn't really that good for anybody, and that indeed does happen. The mid-card level and the main event, I want to focus on right now because, as you can see on the mid-card level, a random episode, Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, whatever, live, we're doing that next Monday. Next Monday's Raw, returning to USA Network, we're going to watch here on the WrestlingMatchShow.com. So make sure, if you want to be with us for that, we're doing one of those a month. You can certainly get in there at the mid-card level, $6.99 a month, or the main event level, $24.99 a month, and you see all the other perks we're going to get. We're working on setting up those Zooms for this month, the quarterly watch-alongs as it relates to PLEs. We'll have another one probably towards the fall, absolutely. And, private event. Which show are we going to watch from the past this month? We're working on that as well. If you are a member, be on the lookout for information on that coming soon. And if you want to be a member, you don't want to miss out on that, well, become a member right now on any of those levels. But mid-card or mat event is what gets you into Raw with us next week to watch it here on the show. And a lot more bonus content that will be coming your way. But we appreciate everybody for being a part of this here at the WrestlingMatchShow.com. Because the support goes a very, very long way, as I am finding that Jeff Jarrett picture. And I found it, which means, Dom, you could bring it back to me, and I don't have to be the guy who's being not polite, paying attention to our wonderful audience here. Let's see, a couple people here chiming in. B-May, going to be a Dynamite tonight. Pump for Danielson Jarrett. Oh, I think that's going to be so much fun. I think you're going to have a great time, B-May. Love to hear the report. I know you're in here often. Good to have you as a member. Please come back tomorrow if you can and tell us how it was. City and local, looking forward to Dynamite as well. Yeah, building strong, continuing going. Think we're going to see Britt Baker back tonight. We'll talk more about Dynamite tomorrow. I know they just announced Vivian Van, who has really come up underway. I remember seeing her name up on Reddit a lot. As someone who's kind of chiming in and getting feedback from people on Reddit. And now she's winning titles out west, and she's been on Dynamite a few times. She's got Mariah May, obviously just getting Mariah on the show. Nice, probably quick match there, but I like it. If you missed it, by the way, over the weekend, Mariah May and Toni Storm had a tremendous pull-apart brawl. I loved the heat of it. It was so well done. Mariah on commentary. Toni coming out for a match, Toni realizing she's right there going, screw this, I'm going to get her right now. And it was the heat that didn't exist, at least, that pull-apart heat that didn't exist for Punk and Drew. I talked about that. Didn't like the fact that, even somebody like Cody and Solo the other day, they get in the ring and they just talk to each other. There's so much heat you build up, and then the week of, it's like, no, we're going to calm down because we have a match. We have a match coming up this week. I don't like that. I don't think it makes sense. But those two, as I go back to Mariah and Toni, the heat has been strong, and I expect more of that tonight. You know where the heat was? On Monday night. Holy hell, what a rating Raw did. A great show, a productive show, a show I actually found far more enjoyable than SummerSlam, which was an angle-heavy show, as was Raw. But my goodness, they popped their best numbers since post-WrestleMania, and they did it on Sci-Fi. They did a ridiculous demo. And that should shut up a lot of people who think I am, he rips them all the time and he only praises he's a shill. No, I praised a great Raw yesterday because it was great, because that's what we do here. And I'm giving them all the credit in the world for a preempted or moved show, whatever you want to call it, to Sci-Fi, going up with the Olympics going on to put up that kind of number. Holy hell, that was so unbelievably impressive. And I'll tell you what, both shows deal with this. Both of the companies, the major companies, deal with this. Sometimes you put on a good show and it's following up a show that wasn't as well received or not as exciting or anything like that. But the rating doesn't follow how good the show was. And sometimes it's, I always look at it as a trend. Have you been on a nice run? Are you giving people a reason to tune in? It's not necessarily, a lot of times it's what you promote, and you can't always promote big stuff for your TV because it's TV. You're promoting your biggest stuff for pay-per-view, and that's fine. But when you put on a show like SummerSlam that was angle heavy, right? Angle heavy, but had a lot of people talking for Roman, for the Judgment Day stuff, for Gunther, for whatever you thought of Punk and Drew and Seth, people wanted to see the follow-up, and they went to Sci-Fi to do it. And I saw Mike Johnson's report yesterday saying, hey, there was a stronger push. And I think the other part of it is, the Wyatt 6 debut. But they did 1.724 and a 0.62 in the demo. I was up 22%, as I'm getting these numbers from WrestleNomics. Shout out to Brandon Thurston. 22% from the week before on Sci-Fi. Down 1% from the trailing 4 weeks, which is not a big deal because it's on another network. And they're up 6% from this last quarter, from the same quarter last year. Those are all great metrics, but the fact that it happened on the channel that they are not typically on, that might have pushed 2 million. I don't know. That's a big, big number. So shout out to them. Credit where credit is due, and I will always do that here on the show. Big, big time. Big time number there. Chris saying money in TV promotion. Yeah. And Chris, this is not just these days, because you got to think about it. The pushing towards TV is not a new thing. Pushing towards TV started with the network. When they launched the WWE Network, you're already getting people's money. You're not trying to get their $50 every month. You want their 10 every month. And now you want their Peacock money every month. And I know I'm speaking more domestically, but that's what they think about. And the TV deals are bringing in the major money. So yeah, Chris, it's a fair point. You want to push towards TV, and I think it's very important that you push at least what's coming up. You don't want people going into TV cold or just like, this person's going to appear, this is who's advertised. Matches are important. The Wyatt 6 debut, I think, was a big draw for people, and putting at the end of the show was certainly important. Those kind of things absolutely do matter. I like the idea of pushing. I like the idea of, pushing matches ahead of time, pushing matches weeks out. It builds things up. WWE does not have a pay-per-view next month. They have Bash at Berlin coming up in August, at the last day of August, which may be something we watch here at the Wrestling Match Show. Just because there's a lack of shows in September, I'm going to try to do something for September. Maybe it happens on August 31st. Still in discussion. Just keep that in the back of your mind. But, if there's no pay-per-view in September, maybe you build up a Raw bigger. Now, the other thing you have to worry about in September is football's back. So how do they treat that? How do they look at that? How much does that matter? It's not going to matter in January. It's not going to matter in January for two reasons. Number one, you don't ever hear Netflix numbers. Number two, if we hear any numbers that come out, I guarantee you it's WWE controlling as they can. Hey, we did this many. Like, they'll get internal reports, I'm sure of that. And they'll say, we did this. I don't think those kind of numbers will get to the media. I don't. Maybe they will. But also, it's like, what are you comparing it to? There's no comparison. People will try to if they can, but that ratings discourse will start to dissipate. Now, of course, SmackDown's going to be on Fox, and we'll still get those numbers. And there is a discussion, I saw it brought up a little bit yesterday, of, should they be moving to streaming? Should they, is this the right time to do it? I think they should, but it's not moving everything to streaming. Raw is going to Netflix in January. SmackDown remains in the NBC Universal family, or WWE show remains in the NBC Universal family by moving SmackDown, now done with Fox, over to USA. So they're still planted in cable. You're on broadcast with CW, and you're on Netflix. So I had heard this from a very high-up executive months and months and months ago, probably a year and a half ago even now, that you want to be in business with as many people as possible if you can, because who knows where things are going to go. Or you don't want to be in business with one company because if they go down or things don't go well, okay, we might be screwed. Well, NBC Universal, CW, Netflix, A&E documentaries, Peacock. And that's just the major stuff. But, Pat running angles on ESPN. Pat running Monday Night Raw angles. I'm honestly surprised this is happening. Pat being allowed to run angles for Monday Night Raw with Wyatt Six and all that stuff on his show to promote to a show that's on a different network. But it's happening. There's obviously a pretty good relationship there with ESPN. We see, Punk was on last week for media promotion, and Roman's been on First Take, and, whatever the hell it's called now, and Seth and Becky have been on there. I mean, you want to have those relationships with different companies, with different massive media entertainment companies. That's a good thing. And right now, who wouldn't want a piece of that pie? Looking how strong wrestling is. So there's something good. That's a good. It's good for wrestling fans, by the way. Seeing wrestling in a lot of different places, and that's just WWE stuff. Obviously, currently, AEW's on TBS and Turner, and they just announced a new TV show of some kind of reality-based show with AEW wrestlers involved. Overdrive, I think it's called. And hey, that's a good piece of news for AEW's future going forward. Hey, let's see AEW wrestlers show their personality in different ways. Talk about building stories. It's all about building characters as well. Let's see them outside of that, wrestling realm. Let's see them be themselves, if you will. And I think that's a good thing. I don't know if the show's going to be any good, but I like the idea that it's happening. Chris mentioning, of course, TKO's got the partnership with UFC through ESPN. So wrestling's in a lot of places right now. And it's extremely accessible. And sure, you got to pay for certain streaming services, but man, if you're wrestling right now, whether you're in WWE, AEW, TNA, New Japan, even if you're on the indies, there's a very good chance your stuff can immediately be accessible. Hey, go watch my match. Here it is. And if you're in the bigger companies, they're going to send stuff out, and we're going to get into Joe Hendry because that's a big part of it right now. But hell of a rating for Monday Night Raw. A massive congrats. Very impressive all around after a good show, which honestly has me excited because we're doing our watch party for Raw here next week for the mid-card level and higher at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. And, you come off a hot Raw like that, I hope it continues next week. I hope we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Before we get into Great American Bash, I did want to talk about Bryan Danielson and Jeff Jarrett. They're having the match tonight. I'm very excited for it. Some people are. Some people are going 55-year-old Jeff Jarrett. Okay. Am I really going to get into this? And I wanted to tell you about what I know about those guys. And I am certainly more Well, it's not closer. I am closer with Jeff. I've known Jeff for longer. I never had a regular relationship with Bryan Danielson because it just didn't happen that way. I'll start with him though. First of all, I will say that I've always been a fan of him. I was a fan of him as an indie wrestler in Ring of Honor. I followed his career. I was so pleasantly surprised when he popped up on the game show NXT. And I remember at the time, and that was season 1, I remember at the time, not knowing, I think, anybody else on the show. Like, I wasn't that tuned in with FCW. It wasn't as widely available. When NXT even started, it was on Hulu. Or NXT when it became more of an actual wrestling show and not the game show, and became the developmental show. It was on Hulu, and I'd heard rumblings about it. But in terms of NXT the game show, which replaced ECW, as people know, seeing Bryan Danielson, or Daniel Bryan as they called him, I was excited for that. And who's Wade Barrett? Well, he jumped off the page right away when they put him with Jericho, and that was cool to see. And, Otunga and Justin Gabriel. And I remember seeing, Michael Tarver and all those guys. And, but I knew Danielson. And I remember they put him with The Miz, and I was like, oh, what the hell are they doing here? And then as I looked back on it later, it was such the right call. Because you had a guy who did the grind of the professional wrestling grind, because I don't want to take anything away from Miz. But that's the story, right? Danielson wrestled everywhere. He wrestled in England. He wrestled all over Europe. He wrestled in Japan. He wrestled in Canada, America, Mexico. He is the prototypical hardworking indie wrestler who made it. That was the story they were trying to tell with him. And you had Miz, who was reality TV show guy, and really didn't work the indies, although he kind of did. But that wasn't the story. And got on Tough Enough, and came out of Tough Enough, and got thrown out of the locker room, and no one liked Miz because of the way he came up. Miz busted his ass in a very different way. So you had polar opposites. And at the time, and I was like, this is dumb. Why would they put Danielson with this guy? They changed his name. I was one of those fans. And you think back on it now, it's like, no, it's perfect. They're foils. They're opposites. Why would he listen to Miz? It made sense. It made all the sense in the world. It was good television. You don't have two guys that were similar. No. Now, having Bryan lose all those matches and then get eliminated, I didn't think that made sense. In the big picture, did it make sense? No. Did it matter? No. He was coming back with Nexus anyway. Then he got fired and went back on the indies and all that stuff. But when I interviewed him a handful of times in WWE, super nice. I always knew he was a guy who knew at that point, and I didn't start interviewing. I started there in September 2019. So at that point, we're years past WrestleMania 30. We're 5 years past his crowning achievement at WrestleMania 30. He's already a made guy. He's established all that stuff, and it was great to see him back in the ring. And but he was always a fun interview. He was insightful. He knew how to talk in and out of character. He knew what that meant. I specifically remember when he was doing stuff, and man, this is such pandemic stuff. If you remember, he was like training with Gulak and Otis. He's like lifting Otis up from behind and all that. And he was taking training from Gulak. And it was funny because who the hell was Gulak in terms of his resume to Bryan Danielson? And they had that match, I remember, in Philadelphia, that was it. That was COVID takes everything down 4 days later. But, it was cool to see it happen. But Danielson's taking pointers from a guy who doesn't have the career that he does. But those three were good television. They had that ring set up in the back where they would cut promos and all that. That was the Thunderdome and the PC stuff. And it was funny. And we had like a mix interview one day where like Danielson was on, and then Gulak was on with Dan, and Gulak comes on with a headset that had a Bluetooth, and he is on the top of a parking garage outside in gear. He's wearing a jacket. He's in his gear, and him and Danielson are talking, and he's like working out during the interview, and he's standing probably 20 feet away from the camera. So you get a full body shot. It's very funny, and I appreciate it. I could tell that Bryan really enjoyed that. Like, it was very obvious how much he was having fun with that. And I think he knew, like, oh, this is ridiculous. And obviously he's gone, a year and a half later. So I interviewed him a few times, and he was always really good, and I really enjoyed him. But that night, this is one of my favorite things, the night that he wrestled Drew Gulak in Philly, and obviously both had ties to Philly and Danielson and Ring of Honor and all that stuff, I was doing watch along. I was in the arena. And I had only been with the company for 5 months at that point. And I walk in, and I'm wearing like, I don't know, a black jacket and gray jeans. And he sees me, and I walk in, and he goes, has anyone ever told you like Orange Cassidy? And I said, it has come up before. And there's a famous, oh, damn it. Let me see if I can send it to you, Dom. I won't be able to find this. We'll put it up on social after. Follow us on Wrestling Mat 23. Someone once quote tweeted one of my NXT injury reports saying, when did Orange Cassidy start doing the NXT injury report or working for WWE? And I look similar-ish. Yes, my hair changed color from yesterday to today because it's life. You do that kind of stuff. But I wasn't wearing denim or anything. But Danielson said that to me, and I laughed. And I was like, yeah, it's been brought up before. He's like, oh, no, you definitely kind of look like that guy. And he laughed, and that was it. Like, that was probably one of our only, direct interactions we had with each other. And about 10 minutes later, I see Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona. And he's like, you look like Orange Cassidy? I was like, what? He's like, you should be the heel version. I was like, what are you even talking about? He's like, you should just wear like all black denim. You kind of had like the salt and pepper hair. And my hair was in no different like color. Like it was natural. Or I was doing some bad color job with it. I'm a natural ginger. He's a bit more blonde than me as a natural. But he's like, oh, you should totally wear black denim, and you got the salt and pepper hair kind of thing going on the side, so you could be like a heel Orange Cassidy. And I laughed, and I was like, I'm a commentator, but I'm there for 5 months. I'm just laughing at that. And my daughter thinks I kind of look like him. I've never worn the full denim, but And a big fan. And I think I've said recently, I got to meet him once amongst friends, and Jim's a great dude. Everyone likes him. And certainly happy for his success. I was at an indie show years ago when he didn't wear the tighter jeans. It was kind of rip stuff. And he used to get the orange juice out of the corner. And it would, he would drink it to get him out of the malaise. He used to play up the malaise stuff a lot more. Adjusting, evolving over time, it's a smart thing to do, but he used to pull the orange juice out of the corner, and then he'd have the small bottle of like not ocean spray, Tropicana, and he'd get it from like a convenience store, and it was this big, and he'd drink that, and that would wake him up. But Danielson was always cool. Interviewed him multiple times. I loved being able to watch him and follow his career. I was happy to see his comeback. All of it was great. Really, really good. Yes, Moby approved. God, what an inside joke. Was it Moby's Cribs, Rob? Was that what it was? Moby's Cribs. I think that was it. Why we found out that Moby liked orange juice. But I wish I got to talk to Danielson more. My only connection with him, by the way, is that we both hosted Talking Smack. And I'm well aware that his version with Renee is the standard and will never be topped. I loved him so much in that show. There is such a I don't give a fuck attitude to him. And when he was doing that show and he was out of the ring and retired at the time and the great promo with Miz and all, he definitely got to a point where he knew like, I can kind of get away with this. And I love that about him. very much knowing his place. I will highly recommend, I don't know where Colt has it, Brian on The Art of Wrestling during not quite top world title status, but certainly established status. Go find that interview where he basically just goes, don't worry about buying my stuff. Please go buy sustainable cotton or whatever the hell it was. And Colt's like, you need to sell your shirts on WWE Shop. What are you doing right now? I very much like that. To be fair, you weren't trying to get fired when you were hosting the show. No, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. Jesus Christ. Him and Renee just had it. And then they did the stuff with Tout. And there was the thing where I think they're like, no, don't talk about Tout, that failed social media thing we did. And we're going to reveal that Chad Gable's my son. Oh God, it was so good. So good. He's very funny. He's much more of a shit stirrer than you realize because he's very comfortable in a spot. And like I said, he's comfortable in his life and beautiful wife and kids. And that's what matters to him now. He's great at being a shit stirrer, like in the best way possible. It's never mean. And he loves wrestling in a different way than I think others do. And, when the guy said, yeah, I was kind of bored and wasn't excited about wrestling Roman and Edge at WrestleMania. Like that shows you, maybe that's a different answer. Maybe it's a different mindset if he's not the guy who wrestled at WrestleMania 30, but 7 years later, he's back in the main event because he kind of forced his way in because nobody really cared as much about Edge and Roman. And he's like, And then he put Roman over again, by the way, and did a hell of a job doing so. And he was gone. Now he's in AEW. And it certainly feels like he's calling his shots. And yeah, Punk, I agree. Roman Bryan had some very special chemistry. I'm going to guess we never get to see it again, but those two guys clicked. And I'll tell you what Bryan Danielson is very good at. Hiding the fact he's going to lose. I talked about Boo Boo Face recently on Busted Open. You never knew the outcome of Danielson's matches, win or lose. And he worked his ass off, even when it wasn't his night. Even when the crowd was behind him. And maybe it should have been his night, or should have been his turn. Before, during, or after his big runs, or his top runs. You never knew. That's how good he was. That's why he's the best. Best is a relative term, but on the right day, if you ask me, I might say he's my best. He's my favorite. And that might be a better answer I give 5-10 years down the road. Just because, and I saw somebody brought up the discourse, and I saw Conrad talking about Cody yesterday, and I think he made a lot of good points. I'm not saying I agree with a lot of what he does or how he conducts himself, but I thought he made a lot of fair points. He's also friends with Cody, so take that for what you will. But there are different parameters to who is the best wrestler or the biggest draw or what, and merch does go a long way. Bryan Danielson checks a lot of those boxes. And I will say this, he didn't always check a lot of those boxes. You might say he had to fight his way through to get to the top in WWE, but he became a better all-around performer there. He did. You have to raise your game, not because it's a bigger place, but because you're playing to a different audience. You have to hone your game. You have to evolve your game. Danielson was always good at that. Always, always, always. Wanted to try things. Was out of the box. The idea of, like he talks about, I want to go put my hair on the line in Mexico against Mystico. Not Mystico. I know. Blue, if someone will say it to me. If Tom's here, he'll say it. He wanted to put his hair on the line, though. He wanted to go wrestle there. Like, he had different goals. And Blue Panther, thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. I think that's who it was. The Blue Panther? Yes. Blue Demon. Now everybody's saying different ones. We'll figure it out. But the idea of I want to grow my hair out so I can go put it on the line in Mexico. He wanted to do that in WWE. They're never going to let him do that. Maybe it's a different story today. See, like, I think if he retires, and whether it's in 3 weeks or in 3 months or whatever, and let's say for whatever reason, he's at AEW. Okay? He's done. Because he did say my wrestling contract expired. I don't know. It's been brought up. He's helping with creative. He's on the disciplinary committee, whatever it might be, right? By the way, it was Blue Panther, so good call by Chris. But let's say his commitments to AEW are done. I absolutely think he would be welcomed back with open arms in WWE. I don't think anybody has any ill will towards him, and he could play a variety of roles. I don't know if he wants to. I think he wants to go home to his kids and his wife and be around for them as much as he can, and maybe more so than he can be now, and I get that. But he should go into every Hall of Fame possible. He should be able to do whatever he wants on his way out, and I'll tell you why. Because he has done so much for others, even when it hasn't been their time, and it might be his time. Sure, frustration will get to you on how you're handled, but I don't think necessarily frustration always got to him. I think sometimes it's boredom. A lot of people go, that guy should have a belt. They should push him. That doesn't always matter. Does it matter that Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga have the tag titles right now? Does it matter? Do you go, oh, Tama Tonga, well, now it's part of a group. Tag team wrestling isn't anything in WWE. They had a hell of a tag match last night. We'll get to that in NXT in a little bit, but you need to be personally and creatively fulfilled. Titles don't do that. Sometimes if it's done correctly, if creative's going in the right direction, sure. But people have been champions before, and it doesn't mean that much. DNC Digital, we see your super chat. I don't want to interrupt the conversation, but I will absolutely get to that. So, Dom, hang on with that. Let's put it in our start, and we'll get to that. I just don't want to interrupt the flow here, but it's a very good question. Danielson wants to be fulfilled in life, in his work. And I understand that. I completely understand that. And I mean, as I've said, I think he's certainly financially well off, and he lives a different lifestyle than most, and that's going to work. But I enjoyed getting to work with him. I enjoy still getting to watch him. I enjoy seeing him in a variety of different roles between WWE and AEW, and him get to do more of maybe what he wants now. And, people are into this because they love that guy. And I hope that he's getting to do everything he wants all the way until he doesn't want to do it anymore. He's earned that. And I guarantee you he will go out on his back whenever that is. I would almost guess that even if they want to put him over at the end, he will go, no. That's not the way this works. I don't need this win to end my career. And honestly, for someone like that, I don't think that's how his career trajectory would go. Undertaker can end on a win. I get that. Stone Cold can end on a win. I get that. Bryan Danielson should go out on his back because he's going to make whoever that is in that last match, maybe it's Swerve, maybe it's somebody else, that's going to be part of someone's legacy, is beating Bryan Danielson. Let's move on to Jeff Jarrett. In a very different conversation, talking about people having popularity, talking about people being a draw, How about sustainability? That is what I've learned from watching Jeff Jarrett, from being friends with Jeff Jarrett. And I'll tell you, I'll take you back to the beginning. Before we put that picture up, Don, let me tell the story, and I'll let you know when to show it. Very young me, and I just talked about this on my interview on the Laps Fan. How did I get started? Very young me. Spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house growing up. And I remember, preschool, kindergarten, very faint memories of that. But on my little tiny TV that I used to watch and eat my lunch at, the local channels, I grew up in northern New Jersey. Even though I live in Connecticut now, I grew up in northern New Jersey. So, lunchtime, you watch Price is Right if you're home or whatever the hell it is. And, oh, no, the news is on. Flip to something else. But on Sports Channel, and this was one of the original. If you're in the New York, New Jersey, tri-state area, you may know about this if you grew up in the 90s. Sports Channel was Channel 3. CBS was Channel 2. Sports Channel was Channel 3. Channel 4 was NBC. Channel 5 was Fox, and so on. Channel 7 was ABC. But Sports Channel was Channel 3. Sports Channel was the regional New York, New Jersey channel. The Nets played on Sports Channel. I think Rutgers played on Sports Channel. High school football, local high school, all that stuff. But they're filling their time with a lot of different things. They got wrestling. I believe it was USWA. I want to say that's what it was. And I didn't know. I think I had seen, I've told people, the first full show I ever watched was WrestleMania 7. The first full match I remember was Hogan Warrior at 6. So I was seeing it. But the thing one of my first memories was watching whatever that was at the time on Sports Channel. I think it was on, it was a syndicated deal, but it was on New York, New Jersey television. And I remember seeing a guy with blonde hair, and he had bright blue and green gear. A young baby face at the time by the name of Jeff Jarrett. And I just remember I liked his gear. Just like my daughter sees Bianca Belair and likes all the girls' gears on TV and thinks those are cool. And, I remember 5, 6-year-old me seeing Jeff Jarrett on television. And now you could put up that picture, Tom, because I put this up. This is me and Jeff at SummerSlam 2 years ago in Nashville. Jeff is, what a weekend this was for Jeff. This is the weekend he referees Usos against the Street Profits and does Ric Flair's last match. And I put this picture up on Twitter a couple years ago, and I said, this is one of the reasons, I'm paraphrasing my tweet, why I got into wrestling. And it's so wild that one of the first people I got to see in wrestling that, introduced me to wrestling, I have crossed paths with so many times organically and still do to this day. So my first interaction with Jeff was, I think I've told the story a little bit. The reason I kind of got into the wrestling business was I had done radio on Sirius XM, and I was always a wrestling fan, and I was trying to find ways to integrate wrestling into fantasy football. And I found out that people from TNA watched or listened to my show on Sirius XM, listened to my fantasy football show. Matt Morgan did, Abyss did. And so I'm talking to a couple of them, and I talked to Matt Morgan a bunch about this. This is a long time ago, not the mayor. I'm talking about the Blueprint Matt Morgan. And him and I talked more, and he was hurt. He ended up getting hurt at the time. And he's like, hey, if you ever want to come to a show, let me know. So I always kept it to football with him. And then he saw me tweeting about wrestling. So he was DMing me about that. And then he introduced me to Brian Hebner, Earl Hebner's son, who was a TNA wrestler, or a TNA referee at the time. And hey, if you want to go to a show, they're in Central Jersey. So I go to I want to say Rahway Rec Center. Wrestle Pros run there. A bunch of indies have run there in the North New York, New Jersey area. TNA's run there. So TNA's running there. And it's like Kurt, Hardy Boys, Dudley's, Jeff's on the show, Aries on the show, Brian Kendrick's on the show, all kinds of guys. So I get hooked up with Brian Hebron. He brings me in, and I had never been in a locker room before. God, this is 2011, 2010. So I'm 25 years old, and I had been in NFL locker rooms before and things like that, and I just shut up, You're not asked for autographs. You're not asked for pictures. It's a privilege to be back there. Just shut up, say hello to people when they say hello to you, and that's it. And I go in the locker room, and I come right over to Brian, and the first, someone just brought up Earl. Earl comes over to Brian, and he's motherfucking, they're supposed to do this, and they're messing with it, and he's so pissed off about something. And Brian tries to introduce him to me, and he's like, hey, who the fuck are you? Nice to meet you. All right. And he goes back out, and something with the opening match. He was mad about merch because they used to sell shirts. The Hebners used to sell shirts based off of screwing Brett. It was a gimmick at TNA shows, and, Don West, made that stuff happen. And I'm backstage, and I'm meeting a couple, and I meet Jeff. Jeff might have wrestled the opening match, and Brian introduced me to Jeff. And Jeff's a huge fantasy football guy. And him and I just start talking. And he's trying to fight. I was like, think I could, we're just talking and shooting shit, and he's asking me about my career. He's like, wow, that's really interesting. And I don't tell the story that I just told. I just was talking to Jeff Jarrett. I was like, God damn, I grew up watching this guy. I hate this guy. As a wrestler, I'm supposed to hate Jeff Jarrett. And we're talking. He's like, hey, could I ever come on your show? And I was like, of course you can, Jeff Jarrett. Yes. He's like, oh, I'd love to do that. So he comes on my show the next week, and he comes on as Memphis heel Jeff Jarrett. Rips me apart. Comes on the air. My producer was not a wrestling fan at the time. Good God, they let you on this show? What the hell? You're 0-7 this year. And it just played it perfectly. I picked it up right away. And I went, oh, that was fantastic. He came on, and whether you knew wrestling or didn't, it was an entertaining 12, 15 minutes. And Jeff was an okay fantasy football player. But it was fun. And I was like, oh, man, I hope we could do more. So I had him on again before Bound for Glory that year. It was in Philly. And he's like, hey, come to the show. And I was like, all right. So at the time, I was living in the Atlantic City area. So we had him on the show. And I remember I drove. It was like Saturday or Sunday night. I can't remember. I think it was Sunday night at the time because I had done a 6-hour show on Sirius. Used to do the game day show. And a friend of mine and I drove to, I was there 2 nights. I take that back. Saturday night, he was on the show Saturday afternoon. I drove an hour or whatever it was to the Bound for Glory fan convention, and it was at the Philly Marriott. So I see Jeff right away, and he's talking to Bischoff, and Bischoff was doing creative, whatever at the time. And I see Eric for half a second, but Jeff's with Karen. And I see him and go, hey, how's it going? He goes, hey, that wasn't too much, because he had buried me on the show in the best way possible. And I was like, no, that was great. He goes, listen, I'm doing some stuff. Hit me up later. And they were doing a fantasy draft. They were trying to launch this fantasy game, which I still think there's legs in, if done correctly. And I then later on was part of this fantasy draft. And Jeff was in it. And I'll find that picture too, because there's a picture of me and Jeff. This hair looks this color back then, naturally. Jeff's got bright blonde, his natural. I mean, we look a lot different. And Jeff was great. And that was kind of my introduction to more of that locker room. I got to hang around people that night, and I met more of the people behind the scenes. And then, and if Jeff's kind of giving you the A-OK and Brian Hebner, you're in. And that's a lesson for anybody. Sometimes you're around people that you grew up watching or you liked or you're fans of. And if you'd like to stay around and be in their business, it's not about pulling this out. It's not about getting an autograph. I just had this conversation with my stepdad yesterday. Like, sometimes it's about getting the experience of being around so then you can do it again. And I'm not saying to not get autographs or things like that. I'm just saying I think there's something to be said for that. Because you know what? Because of the way I acted, it led to a lot of other things. And Jeff and I remained friends, and I would go to shows and the next, so that was like November, right? They ran Bound for Glory like October, November. The next year, I got a call in early August from Jeff and Karen after a TNA show. And they're like, when are you coming to our house? Blah, blah, blah. And they live in Tennessee. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, we have a draft the end of the month. And I got Karen going, you better come to this draft, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I'll come. And Jeff and I then continue talking. And it's, hey, I want to bring you to my house. And you're going to be my secret fantasy assistant, consigliere, helper, expert for the draft. And I was like, for real? He's like, I'll fly you out. I was like, all right. Because we have a TNA league. I want you to be in the league as my like co-owner. And I was like, okay. So I was working for a fantasy football site at this time, and I, could do some remote stuff. This is before remote became a normal thing. And Jeff flies me out on a Monday. And I got there late, and I was working the whole time. And I said, listen, I just got to tell you, when's the draft? I said, I got to still do work. It was late August. We're doing write-ups and preseason games and fantasy draft stuff, all that stuff. For those that play fantasy football, no, you got to, late August that's the time to draft and really get ready for this is it. Who are the sleepers? Who's this guy? Where do I draft him? So I was like, hey, I got to work. So I get flown in. He sends a car for me. I stay in one of his guest rooms in the house I know he still lives in to this day. Beautiful place. Jeff had done well for himself, was still doing well for himself. And I worked in his office the whole day, the entire day. Dom, I'll try to send you one more if we can sneak it in there, if I can find it in time, because it's at the beginning of my timeline. I'll keep telling the story, but believe me, you want me to find this picture. I'm mad I didn't think about it sooner. Here we go. I won't send you any more than this one, but Dom, if you can get this one up, you can post it whenever. Just let me know when we have it. So I'm in Jeff's office working all day, writing up stuff, and no one knows I'm there. Nobody knows. And Biss is in the league. The late, great Bob Ryder's in the league. Some of the creative staff. Vince Russo's in the league. Eric Young's in the league. Dreamer was supposed to be there, but he had some kind of family thing. And I'm talking to Jeff, and he's like, nobody knows you're here. You know who figured out I was there? Samoa Joe, somehow. Wasn't in the league. Joe was just always tapped in, and I had met Joe a couple times. He knew. For some reason, he knew, but I found out after the fact. So everybody's at the draft, and there's like an outdoor kitchen. We're all hanging out and, drinking beers, hanging out, having grilling, all that stuff. And as the draft's about to start, Dom, let me know when we have that picture because it's very relevant to the story. I talked to Jeff, and I was like, he's like, what if we like did something fun with you? And I was like, you tell me what you want to do. And he's like, what if you made an entrance? And he had a backyard where I could have made an entrance. And I was like, all right. So, is it ready, Dom? All right, hold on. The text is going to come up. I could kind of still tell. Oh, it didn't go through, did it? Ah, damn it. We'll try it again. I might have to just show you guys this picture in a second. But I get Jeff's, one of the ring jackets he was wearing, the cutoff ones with the J's on it. I think he kind of still wears them from time to time. I get one of those jackets. I grab one of the guitars, and he had those guitars made for the TNA Shop website that had like the laser on it that was like drawn in. And I grab one of those, and I have like sunglasses and a hat, and we figure out, all right, I'm going to come out with Karen. Like Karen's going to accompany me down the stairs out of his house for this big entrance. And I was like, hey, can I use your Kid Rock Cowboy WCW theme? He's like, hell yeah, you can. So they had music, and they play the song, and I come out, Karen's on my arm with the guitar, with his ring jacket, and I walk down the stairs, and I make an entrance to the fantasy draft. And some people knew who I was, some people didn't. And it's one of my favorite memories that 14 people were there for. And 5 minutes after I walk down and we're starting the draft or whatever, Dom, I got to email it to you, I guess. I'm going to try to do this, folks. I'm not trying to be distracting, but I want you to see this picture. 5 minutes after I finish the entrance or whatever, Vince Russo comes up to me and he goes, bro, that was great. I thought you were Road Dogg, bro. I was like, what? I go, thank you. And he's like, no, not a bad thing. That's a compliment. I thought you were Road Dogg the way you looked. And I was like, okay, thank you for that, Vince Russo. And we do the draft. And yes, I should have come out to Bree-Woo. I know that. But, how do I not come out to that music? Damn, I can't get this picture up. All right, I will tell you right now. This is going to go up on our social media. There's a couple of pictures we're going to need to post up. We'll follow this up. My texts are not going through right now. Oh, you got it. Dom got it. He's going to put it up in a second. So I do the draft, and I actually get the story. And I'm going to save this for another time because I kind of want Jeff to tell it, and I want Jeff to come on the show. I actually get the story behind With My Baby Tonight, which for those that don't know was Jeff's country song that he sang, was part of the vignettes and, the stuff with Shawn Michaels and In Your House Too. He tells the story that he can tell way better than me of how that music video came to be. It's great. So that's how far back I go with Jeff. And I'll fast forward it because I think people know like Jeff was kind of out of TNA for a bit and then back and all that stuff. And I was still around TNA and meeting people, and it's why I kept working my way up into the wrestling world, and how I met Dreamer, and how I got hired for House of Hardcore. But when I got hired in September 2019, Jeff was working for WWE. He had, Hall of Fame. There is the picture. So that's Jeff's office. By the way, that's a picture that Jeff Hardy made from. That's Jeff's office. That's me working on my old black MacBook. And I was about to come out. I'm wearing like white, ridiculous pants that I knew was hot there. I have his guitar. I'm wearing his ring jacket. That was the stupid hat I wore. And I'm wearing purple glasses, and I came out. I had a black tank top on, some kind of like white open shirt. I don't know. I was like 24, 25. I lived in a beach town, and that jacket. And I walked out with Karen on my arm. And anyway, Jeff and I, end up back together in WWE in September 2019. So I'll tell this story very quickly because I know we're running a little late. Jeff has this pitch. He was working in he was a producer. He was in live events. He was in international. He was in WWE. He was out of WWE. He was back in. But in September of 2019, and a couple months after that, Jeff was working in live events, and they were trying to boost live events, which is even crazy to think about now. And Jeff was using a very promotional, what was working in the world kind of tactic of, well, let's give people more bang for their buck. They're not just coming to a live event, a house show. What if we did juiced up tickets, which they're doing now, those priority pass things and the meet and greets? What if we do, hey, if you get this level of ticket, you get to watch a concert with Elias before the show. You get to watch an episode of The Bump. And that was the thing. I don't think the whole crew would have went, but it would be like, hey, for the weekend, we're going to do mini Bump episodes, and you're going to interview Kofi before the show for a half hour, and people will get to be part of that. And, there was different little way. And I was like, man, this was a very big thing to me in terms of respect because of where that picture was. And then Jeff pitched me. He's like, hey, can I take you in a room and talk to you about this? And he didn't have to do that. But he had respect for my opinion, which went a long way with me, and I thought it was super cool. And he took me in a room, and he basically was like, I want to do this, I want to do this. What do you think? Would this work? And I was like, wow, how far we've come. Not that I didn't deserve it, but I had worked for it for 2 months. But I appreciated that he looked at me in that way. And I was like, man, this could work. And then pandemic and all that stuff goes out the window, and Jeff's out of the company, and the back in the company, and we did not get to interact again. I would see him from time to time, but we were doing different things until SummerSlam. And for SummerSlam, Jeff was going to be the ref, and I asked for him on the bump that week, and we got him on, and we told a lot of great stories, and how he started as a ref before he was a wrestler, and that would be the background he had. And I loved the way he was very. Jeff didn't go out there and wing it. And I'm not saying that he didn't have the instincts to. He did, but he wanted to have a direction of where things were going. He wanted to be prepared, and there was there was a pride in his presentation, which still exists to this day, which is still why he can cut the promos that he's been cutting and still get you invested in a match with Bryan Danielson tonight on the road to All In. There's a reason Jeff has been able to stick around the wrestling business for as long as he has. And that's a different level than being a top draw. That is consistency. That is being able to find value, create your own value. And from a a grandson of a promoter to an owner to a wrestler to a producer to, he is, you name it, he's done it. And there's been really good stuff and there's been stuff that hasn't worked. And I understand that. Jeff Jarrett's a big reason why New Japan became a thing in America. And I don't think that he gets enough credit for that. Not him being in Bullet Club. I'm talking about going, hey, we should broadcast that over here. And getting Jeff JR and Matt Stryker involved. And I know it wasn't all him, but Jeff was a big part of that. One of the earlier streaming services. And he's a musical recording artist. Great line. That was good. Very good. And that, of course. I mean, he played that guitar. Don't worry. You guys just didn't hear it. But I took that picture. You could put that picture up again with me and Jeff if you could, though. It hit me on that day. And I think everybody was in a good mood because this was first post-Vince pay-per-view. I said, I want to get this picture. And I told him the story at the ring that day. And I never told him the story. For all the interactions, we're at the ring, we're watching things. And I said, hey, I'm really happy I get to be here with you. Because I don't know if you know this, but I first saw you when I was like 5 years old. And you kind of introduced me to wrestling. And here we are at SummerSlam in a city that is synonymous with you in wrestling, and I get to be on the same show with you. And he really appreciated that. And I know, Jeff has told the story of sobriety and fighting through that, and, that never ends. And I know that stuff mattered to him more. But that was one of those things where, like, you take the moment in and you kind of look around. And I always like to do that. When I went to Mania for the first time or, got to be at play, I always kind of take a walk around the arena. And that day when I saw Jeff and I got to talk to Jeff as a coworker and I was happy for him and, we see where he is. I mean, he was out of the company right after that, which is wild. And Jesus Christ, he's wrestling Bryan Danielson. You want to talk about the staying power of somebody who never gives up and always finds a way back in and finds value. That's Jeff. I'm happy that I can send Jeff a text. I'm happy that he will respond. I'm happy that, I could see him at AEW. As I've said, I went to Forbidden Door and we were genuinely happy to see each other and shoot the shit. And him and I have had multiple conversations. And I'm not talking about like, he's a source for me. Like, no, like I would never actually ask that stuff of Jeff. But him and I have had conversations since February when I got let go about a lot of things. And, I'm a big fan. That's you want to talk about getting it in wrestling? Jeff Jarrett gets it. And once again, nobody's perfect in what they do. Nobody always hits home runs. But I talk about the consistency. In wrestling, a push is not about winning titles. It's about being consistently on television, consistently used, consistently in the mix. Jeff Jarrett always finds a way to stay in the mix. And I've learned a lot from him. I'm happy that I get to know him, and I'm happy that I got to share those stories with you about him. And I'm sure there's other ones, and hopefully one day. He's a very busy guy. My World's a hell of a podcast. I fucking love that show. He is one of the most honest and forthcoming people that do these shows. He gives a lot more details than other people do, and he comes from such a different upbringing than most people that have done it, and he's worn so many more hats than so many of these people that do these podcasts that his perspective is different, and I very much appreciate that about him. I always like talking to him, and it's been cool to talk to him more as my journey is continued in the wrestling industry because, there's more of an understanding of what he's doing, and he also respects what I've done. And that goes both ways. And this was going to be a show about NXT as well. And I am very late on time. I watched the entire show. I talked a lot about it. I want to get into Joe Hendry, though, very quickly before we wrap things up. Once again, though, I hope you enjoyed that. I love sharing these stories, and I like talking about somebody who has oddly meant a lot to me in my entire wrestling journey. Like, it's kind of wild that Jeff Jarrett is a constant. I don't talk to him every day. I don't talk to him every week, but there's just something that has kept us linked together. And I have a Jeff figure, and I have it somewhere, and I need to put it out here. I will find that because I've had it for a while. But I'm happy I have those pictures. I'm happy I get to still call Jeff a friend, and I'm happy I get to see him wrestle tonight against Bryan Danielson for a match that, you know, whether you're a sicko or an old school wrestling fan or just somebody that knows that those two dudes in Bryan Danielson and Jeff Jarrett are two of the very best workers in the history of wrestling for very different reasons. I'm happy they are getting in the ring tonight and we all get to watch it. And I hope maybe today, after you heard that story, you look at that match a little bit differently. And if you were not a fan of Jeff or younger and go like, why is this older guy in the ring? I don't know. Maybe I made a couple new fans. And I hope one day Jeff can be on the show. But someone who was just on the show, and this is a segue, and I shouldn't call that out, but it is. Someone who was on the show last week, Joe Hendry, last night, put on a masterclass. The music hit. Didn't love Booker and Vic still arguing about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff, because as soon as Joe's music hit, I wouldn't have said a damn thing. You let that crowd carry that atmosphere. They sang every word. You didn't even need you could have hit the first beat and played an instrumental track. And I think that is the best commentary of all. I actually wrote, lay out like it's Suzuki's entrance. Come on. Because then, like, you know, you're doing that, like, that crowd was on fire for Joe Hendry. They were with everything the whole time. I would have let that breathe. There is no story you need to tell other than the story that's happening. And for a guy who was so over for this and for this, and maybe has had his wrestling questioned a little bit for whatever reason, I love that Joe hopped over the top rope right away because that crowd was like with him. He did the pose and he had him and he hops over the top rope and they got even hotter. And it was a smart move from a kayfabe standpoint of take out the two guys you got to worry about, but also the crowd was whoa. And he jumps off the boom. And by the way, he does this right after the NXT title's on the line. And you listen to the crowd for Ego and Oro Mensa, and you listen to the crowd for Joe Hendry and Joe Coffey, and it is day and night. And that is why I am making the point. I said it in the promo. I'm saying it here. Joe Hendry's the guy in NXT. The guy. Now, you don't rush to put a title on the guy, whether it's here or in TNA, whether you see him here in NXT or in TNA, you let that story continue to build. That's fine. No one is getting that reaction. Nobody. Nobody in NXT. Nobody in TNA. He even did, if you noticed, a little Samoa Joe spot. Coffey goes to the crossbody, and Joe does this to walk away. It was the Joe walkaway spot, which is a Samoa Joe spot. Joe Hendry put his own little spin on it. He posed, and Joe Coffey misses the crossbody. I love that he did the Eddie spot on the outside of the ring and got Gallus out. He didn't let that crowd have a chance to sit down last night. And I know what that is its own atmosphere, the NXT crowd. He didn't let them sit down last night. He made the most of every single second in that match. The crowd doing the don't stop believing, I believe in Joe. The chants continue the whole match. And listen, I see Trick getting brought up. You know I'm a Trick guy. And I believe he is the guy. Dropped down a little bit last night, losing to Pete Dunne, but at least it looks like they're setting up Pete Dunne and Ethan Page. I don't know why Trick has completely lost his way because he flukely lost the title to Ethan Page, even though he beat him the month before. I don't know what I get it. He needs to overcome some things, but I don't get why he's like lost it all of a sudden. You know who hasn't lost it, though? Joe Hendry. I thought it was a masterclass. From entrance to bell to the promo he cut to Sarah where he says, I'm staying around. And now that people know he's staying around, now you expect him on TV every week. Let's see where this goes. let's see how much Joe Hendry gets pushed. But I really implore you, if you haven't seen it, watch that. They even did a little social promo, him walking through the NXT crowd, outside before he walked in. Watch that. And then watch from the minute his music hits to the minute he finishes that promo with Sarah. He was excellent. Excellent. Maximizing the minutes and the machines behind him. Because if you notice on NXT, on Instagram, I should say, Joe Hendry, NXT, and the main WWE account all tagged in that dive over the top rope. They don't always do that. They don't always connect the WWE and NXT accounts. They know what they have. I'm very happy for Joe. I'm very happy that we had him on the show last week. I'm very happy that he revealed exclusively on the show last week that he is training at the Performance Center and that he's doing things people haven't ever done before. Joe is very well in tune with the opportunities that he has earned, he is getting, and what to do with those opportunities. And if you haven't seen that, go back and watch it at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Jeff Jarrett, Bryan Danielson tonight, full Dynamite review tomorrow. If I don't have a ton of big, massive insights about NXT last night. The title placements were interesting. Trick and Pete opening, Pete winning. They're setting up Pete and Paige. I liked the turn last night with Wes. I hated the camera angle of it. Hated it. When they get the wide shot because there's separation, you know what's coming. It should have been on Zach and it should have been on Wes. You didn't need to have all three in the same shot because when you showed the gap, you showed that something was going to happen. And that is the glossiness of WWE that bothers me sometimes. It was telegraphed just a little too much. You don't want to telegraph it. You don't want people to expect it. If it was a quick zoom out and catch it, that you step back with the camera to catch it, not go, oh, we'll keep him in frame. The rest of it was great. Wes doing it. Why'd you leave me? All the motivation. I loved it. I hate when that stuff gets telegraphed. Because I know they rehearse the shit out of it because that's what NXT does. That's what Raw and SmackDown do too. That's something that's very WWE that they're probably not going to change. They want to make sure they get it right and they don't want to miss it. But I think you also give it away when you take a shot like that. But it's wrestling and it's all a story and it's all television and hey, that's what it is. All right, we'll talk more about Dynamite, of course, tomorrow as they continue towards All In. We'll see if any other news breaks. But I really enjoyed this today. I did not expect to go as long as I did on Danielson. I certainly didn't expect to go as long as I did on Jeff. I hope you enjoyed that. I love bringing those stories. Those are personal. Those are fun. Those are real. And you know what? If you watch that match a little bit differently tonight, or if you're going to watch it when you weren't going to watch it, that's even better. Because I think no matter what company that match happened in, I'd be recommending it tonight. So if you don't watch anything else tonight, make a point to watch that match because we're certainly going to be talking about it tomorrow. We'll break down all the Dynamite. Any other news that comes down, we will have it for you here. Make sure you go check out thewrestlingmatchshow.com for shorts, for past episodes. We had Joe Hendry on last week. Go watch that interview if you haven't watched it yet. Join down below. Go to our membership page. You're in the mid-card level. You're in the Matt event level. If you sign up for those in the memberships, you get a lot of perks, but you get to watch Raw with us next Monday. I got to do this because he put two in. Sorry, and I don't want to. DNC, you're getting both of these on there right now. What one match will you show a non-fan to show you why you love wrestling? Also, Dream Survivor Series Team 5 from any era. I'm going to try and do this quickly. What one match will you show to any non-fan why you love wrestling? Oh, my. Okay. So I would show. Okay. One match I would show that is it would need to be explained. I would show Invisible Man versus Invisible Stan, refereed by Bryce Remsburg from Spring Break a couple years ago. It's art. I would absolutely show that match. And I would show Cesaro, Sami Zayn on NXT. And I probably could give you a lot more answers and different answers on a different day, but that's what came to mind. And then this. You saw Danielson Claudio, took my 15-year-old daughter. She turns to me and says, Dad, I think we're watching something special. Wow, that's awesome. A 15-year-old. That's cool. DNC, thank you for both of those super chats. Love sharing those stories. I think, I'm a huge Claudio fan. And the fact that we might get Claudio and Okada at All In is awesome from a wrestling standpoint, but super happy for Claudio. Someone else who I am a super big fan of as a human being. Man. That's a cool story to share. DNC to share. DNC, I appreciate you sharing with those with us. My 5-person Survivor Series team. Okay, ready? Let's go. Austin, Punk, because I want good promos here. Austin, Punk, Terry Funk. Scott Hall and Nash. Let's put a team on it. That's my 5. And that's top of the dome. And once again, that could be another one where I ask differently. So Austin, Punk, Terry Funk, Hall, and Nash. That's my 5. And I think kind of the fun of that would be, and I used to do this on a show that's on Peacock. What's the other 5 look like? Because anytime I do the 5, I go, well, who are they feuding against? What do those promos look like? And if I probably think about it again, I'd probably put Austin Punk on separate teams, but those would be my 5. It would have been easy to throw Sean on there and be a click thing, but, I think, what I would think about? I would think about Terry Funk doing Terry Funk stuff and Austin and Punk being on the apron, just soaking it in. Just like when Snuka and Piper didn't think in the Rumble and you watch Punk hiding a laugh. Like, I think it would be fun to watch Austin and Punk on the ring apron watching Terry Funk be Terry Funk. Okay, what a way to end the show. And I'll be back tomorrow to talk about wrestling even more right here at the Wrestling Mat. See you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, everybody.